The Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman died in 2006, but his ideas live on, and that includes the concepts he expressed in the popular television series Free to Choose. Our next guest helps bring those ideas to new viewers every day through new projects. Robert Chatfield is president and CEO of the Free to Choose Network. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
First of all, tell us about the Free to Choose Network. What is it, and what is it that you're trying to do?
As you may have surmised, we are the original film company that produced Milton Friedman's Free to Choose series. A little trivia for you is that the book actually came out after the film. Most people are unaware of that. But our founder, Bob Chittister, sort of created this idea of how do we get Milton's ideas out there. And it was a response to a public television program that I believe was a 13-part series on canes. And somebody from public television said, we should have another side of this here. And Bob says, well, we can do it in 10 because Milton's much more efficient. So,
And so this company produced the Free to Choose series, which
Correct.
was on PBS. People
Yep.
may remember that. And then it became a book.
Yeah.
But now, 12 years after Milton Friedman is gone, you're still putting together projects.
I was going to say 40 years after that project, we're still going strong as a film studio. So we still produce documentary films. Our primary outlet is still public television. So UNC TV around here will often air our programs. We are still looking to figure out how to reach the masses that haven't heard the message yet. And I think that's probably the key differentiator for us and a lot of people that might be considered libertarian, conservative, et cetera, is we go out of our way to really go out and try to look for the people who have never heard this message before.
And the message is still the same message about the value of policies that promote freedom and
Correct.
individual liberty and letting markets work.
And most people consider these conservative ideas or libertarian ideas. Milton never considered it that way. Milton considered himself a self-described radical. And that's one of the things that we continue to say is that we're not pushing a conservative agenda. What we're pushing are winning ideas. And these winning ideas essentially are, if you leave people alone, let them choose what they want to be able to do. In general, they'll choose well, and they'll be happier people.
One of the things about Free to Choose that set it apart from what was there before is this was not a book. This was not something with a bunch of charts and graphs or talking heads and academics. Basically, Milton Friedman, though he was very intellectual and an academic, was telling stories that just normal, everyday people could understand. Is that still the goal?
And absolutely. And Milton was coached along well, as I said, by our founder, Bob Chittister. It lasted him a lifetime in terms of the coaching there. But we'll go out to, we just did a series on Adam Smith called The Real Adam Smith, for example. Is he still relevant today? Well, let's get on a Maersk ship and go around the world and find out if Adam Smith is still relevant today by looking at trade, specialization, and other matters like that. We did a program called India Awakes, where we went and saw what's happening in India. Almost anywhere we go through where we see them making reforms towards a more market-based economy, we'll still travel the world. We'll still find those stories, and we'll still put those stories on air.
Do you see that people who see these programs, some of them will have the light bulb go off and go, oh yes, this does make sense, I get it now?
One of the funniest stories was a colleague of mine was in a taxi cab in New York and was just talking to the cab driver. The cab driver says, yeah, I saw this thing on Adam Smith. What an interesting guy he is. And the colleague was not from our organization. He says, I'm going to see that film producer right now. I hope you don't mind if I tell him that. So I think, the light bulb still goes off for a lot of people. Again, they're just not exposed to the ideas. Nobody really gets a giant economics curriculum in high school. If you went through college, you might have taken a course or two in this. But unless you're well-versed in it, these continue to be esoteric ideas for many. And the more we can turn them into stories that people understand, the more people realize economics really boils down to choices. And if you are free to choose, again, you're more happy.
We are chatting with Robert Chatfield, who is the president and CEO of the Free to Choose Network. And you mentioned that people may have had an economics course in college and probably still scarred by thinking of supply and demand curves and econometrics and all of the jargon. How difficult is it to translate these concepts, some of which are intuitive, but others are not? How difficult is it to translate these concepts into things that people who don't have that economics background or don't want to have to think about economics can understand?
I'll take you to our latest production. It's a film called Sweden, Lessons for America, and that has a question mark at the end of it, by the way, about Bernie Sanders said America should be more like the Nordic countries. We should be more like Sweden. And we proceeded to go in and take a real deep dive into some of those statistics. But how do you tell those statistics? It's not, we have very few graphs in this documentary film. But there are a couple that really point out some ideas to you. And as I said, you hit it on the head there with regards to not having the supply and demand graphs. You can't do that. But what you can talk about, what happened with tax rates by showing people who were literally driven out of Sweden because of the tax rates, and they were the Swedish celebrities. The author of Pippi Longstockings, Ingmar Bergman, the famous film producer. These people were driven out of their native country because of the tax rate. And when the labor unions started to take over more and more of the companies and the entrepreneurship went away, what happened? And so we tell those things through the stories. You're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, tax rates of 102% are punitive. Everybody understands that component. But if you can tell it through the eyes of the story and how it impacted even the people in Sweden, then it seems to have more resonates more with the people who are watching this here to say, yeah, now I seem to get this. The idea that Sweden is a social democracy is really a falsehood.
This work, as you said earlier, goes back 40 years, and we have seen the media landscape change quite a bit over that time. Even over the past few years, people are getting their information in new ways. They don't really watch TV or films as much. People get their information from their phones, through the internet. Does that create challenges for the Free to Choose Network about how do we get this valuable information to people so they'll actually see it and hear it?
There's two avenues we're still going through. We still go through public television as our distribution outlet for a couple of reasons. One is, if you're a school teacher that wants to be able to use this and it was shown on public television, it has sort of a stamp of approval. That somebody else has sort of vetted this product out there and that it's safe for general consumption, if you will. And again, I don't know what's so scary about an idea that says people who are free tend to be happier than those who aren't. But there is this concept that, oh my gosh, for some reason the conservative right wing has a monopoly on freedom, therefore nobody else can have this and it's bad. So public television, as I said, reaching out to that audience and making sure we're spreading that message through there in a broad form. Also make sure that we're getting audiences of 500 to 1 million people on a regular basis for what we're putting out. And it's a diverse audience, as we well know. The side question you asked on that one is more about the fragmented market and people having to go out and search and find things. And I think that's where everybody's facing the challenge there. But I think if you push this out through channels, as I said, public education, public television, and still use the purpose of mass media, which is not to hit a targeted swath of audience that already agrees with your message, but to try to show other people, maybe there's another way you can think about this. I think we still do a good job for there, and I don't think we should be ignoring those markets.
Our time is running short, but if people want to learn more about Free to Choose Network, what's the best thing for them to do?
I would go to www.freetochoose.tv, as in television. They can download any of our programs there for free. There's also some additional information with regards to that. But that's the best spot to just go see what we've been doing for the past 30 years.